Hey guys, welcome to Cosplay Eternity, where we are cosplaying eternity in the already but not yet kingdom. I'm Trevor Anderson. I am a stand-up comedian, writer, actor, and minor Bible scholar. You guys might know me from the Babylon Bee podcasts and other videos. And this is my little brother, Josh.
Hi guys, this is Joshua Anderson. I started this channel, Cosplay Eternity, about 8 years ago. It was initially a Bible study that I was going through as I was going through seminary. I got my MDiv, pursuing just different biblical credentials and studying the Word of God, trying to bring the truth of the gospel into a more clear view. Also, we focus on apologetics and culture. And yeah, so that's a little bit about me. That's the channel. We're going to go and start to do a little bit more episodes to try to just address the things of today. And today, specifically, we're going to talk about what is in the news right now in the Christian sphere. We're talking about the controversy between Mark Driscoll and the men's conference performance. I guess there was a circus performance in the beginning, and everybody is just going crazy. So that's what we're going to cover today.
I am sick of talking about it.
Okay, so let's get right into it. And if you're not aware, if you've been living under a rock in the last, I don't know, 24 to 72 hours, and you don't know what happened, James River Church had a men's conference called the Stronger Men's Conference, where there've been a pretty outlandish conferences in the past where they do a lot of really cool showy things that get people into their conference. Very masculine or caricature of masculinity, but basically I saw this, I think, on Monday is where it really broke. So what happened was, and from my perspective, what I saw was the post from like in Not the Bee, and they had like a tweet by Caden, which basically says, the mega church has a strip show like performance at the men's conference. Guest speaker Mark Driscoll spoke out against it and was kicked. So interestingly enough, we have this guy Alex Magala, who is a circus performer, won a bunch of competitions on Britain's Got Talent, Russia's Got Talent, America's Got Talent, been all over the place doing this same act. And essentially what the act is that he takes off his shirt. He's got this large Chinese pole, which is an acrobatics pole performance thing. He goes and swallows a sword, climbs up on the pole, hangs upside down, and then like free falls with his legs wrapped around the pole. And before he actually hits the ground, impaling himself with the sword, he stops. Now, he's done this performance multiple times throughout the years, as early as 2016. I think he was on America's Got Talent, or even before that. Anyway, so this post kind of tries to paint the picture of the performance in question, Mark Driscoll's response to that, and then also the Mark Driscoll getting kicked off stage. But they also added an article from 2016. We're talking about Alex Magala and his past. Apparently he was a stripper at 21 back in 2011 or something, when he came to the United States.
Hasn't been, as a former stripper myself, I can tell you.
Well, I think they fired you because you didn't have any rhythm. But
that's true. They fired me because I had a big old belly. They were like, listen, Trevor, no one wants to see.
There's a market everywhere. Well, I mean, apparently if you take off your shirt at a men's conference, it doesn't matter, right, if you're cut or not, then it's, homosexual temptation or something. I don't know.
That was one of the things that I wanted to point out too, for this Mark Driscoll's critiques of this thing were weird to me. A lot of people were saying, yeah, Mark Driscoll needed to call this out. Well, okay, if it was a strip show, then it should have been called out. But
right. Oh, that's a good point. And before we get before we get into it, let's tell a little bit about the setting of the event, right?
Okay.
So Friday night, is the beginning of the show. And you and I have been to different men's conferences. We've been to youth conferences growing up. We grew up in church.
Choir the Fire, you remember those?
Oh my gosh, all of them, right? So you have all these events, and we essentially you go in, it's everybody's hyped, and as soon as you open the door, go through the doors, it's just like it's like music and everything. And it's I don't know for any of you Catholics or you Reformed guys out there that had different youth camps, I don't know what yours was like, but in the non-denom category, like we went all out, and it was just very big, very hypey and everything. True. So it was like,
I'm pretty sure. I was talking to a guy in the Reformed tradition, and he was saying that they just whip themselves. It was just self-flagellation. So that's
it seems more Catholic to me. I don't know.
That's true. That's true. Well, I don't know, man. Did you read about Martin Luther?
Well, that's true. He was coming out of that, right? The Catholics whip themselves, and the Reformers, the Calvinists, they just call themselves worms. I don't know.
Okay.
That's that's very John Owen.
Poor guys, you poor Calvinist worms. I feel bad. No. Okay. No,
anyway,
I love you guys. Right.
So basically, that's the way these events happen. Oftentimes, it's very hypey, and so that's what I think happened in this instance. In fact, let me go ahead and share a little bit about what I saw, like their flyer online of what they have. Look at this. Let me share this. Can you see this? Oops.
Not yet. Yeah, there we go. Oh yeah.
Okay, so like this is their conference, right? So this is like a page for like the highlights of over the years. I think it's gone back to 2017. So check this out, right? So 2023, right? You have the beginning of the like Friday night. They have this big thing where like they had a tank. Look at this. Like,
I mean,
you want to talk about a caricature of masculinity? Take a tank, roll over cars, have smoke machine and fire, and a dude shooting guns. It's like the Ronald Reagan on a Raptor or on an Eagle,
right?
Yes. It's like,
but let me just say, yes, it is a caricature of masculinity for sure. But if I went to a men's conference and they did this, I would be like, hell yeah, dude, yes. Absolutely,
it would be very excited.
Are you kidding me?
Right. Yes, so this is I think this is where the like the area of controversy kind of comes in, right? So many people that I've talked to and different things that I've seen online, like immediately people are like, no, you shouldn't have any of this stuff ever.
Right. No, yes, church should okay, but this isn't a Sunday service. Okay. This is a dude hangout, and you're listening to like a ton of speakers. You know what I mean? You need something in between because
see, I don't know if this is in between though. Sure, I'm not sure. Maybe it is.
You need something interesting to break up the hours and hours and hours of sermons because otherwise it's I mean.
So what about like the idea that this is a we're here, if we're going to a men's conference, we're here to grow, we're here to be challenged, we're here to focus on the message of the gospel.
Is any fun allowed?
It's a sacred space. Like, how do we mix the sacred and the the casual, right?
Well, one of the things that I've learned about the Lord is that he doesn't like it when we have fun in his presence. That's like, chill out, dude.
Yeah, well, okay, so but here's the thing. I think the issue is it takes, like, the issue that people have is that it takes away from the posture of like reverence or sincerity and everything. I think here's the interesting thing for me. Like, I think it's a little bit showy if it's like, hey, we're gonna do this and then just jump right into it and like try to have like this mixture of like, what if we start questioning, like, what are we here for? Are we here for a show or are we here for a men's conference? It's the same thing. I'd have the same critique of going to a a church where it's just all about the worship and it's like this smoke machines, fog machines. Like, what is this, right? So I get this. If this is like an evangelism event, I get that. If there's a separation between, okay, here's the time for entertainment, here's the time for the word, and it is something that is distinct.
Obviously, they're not doing this while somebody is preaching.
No,
obviously.
But I mean,
right. So
the question is like,
I don't understand why these two things can't coexist.
I get that.
Of course,
I understand.
Like, categorized. Like, what do you need? What do you need between?
Well, and that's the thing.
And show me. By the way, chapter and verse where it says you can't do something like this.
So you gotta be careful because you say, of course, it's going to be categorized. But
well,
you
it
got to
has to be
understand,
because you can't do it at the same time as something else.
I mean, obviously, but you got to talk about, like, you're talking about the setting, right? There are times like in the middle of a, of a sermon where an object lesson kind of goes off the rails, and it's like, what are we watching here? It's not, has nothing
Yeah.
to do with it. I'm not suggesting that this is an object lesson. I'm just talking about designated space, right? Intentionality of what we're here for. It's like we do this event, and then like immediately after we're going into a message or something. I can imagine like something like this happens, and then you go into like a time of worship, right? And that usually happens, right, in these events where you go and it's like, the
Well,
system is
and
down, right?
maybe
And then
this
you go
is
into
between
worship, right?
maybe this is between worship service. Maybe the worship service
Yeah,
is over, and then they
I
do
don't know.
something cool like this, and
See,
then they
I would
do
be, I think I would
right.
have an
But
issue if it was
what
between
kind
the
of
worship service.
why?
But the
Why?
thing is, because it changes the actual point and the sacredness of the moment, like of the focus, right? If we do worship, we're focusing, we're all coming together in unison. It's a time of the saints kind of getting together and worshiping. And then all of a sudden, boom, there's these explosions and all this stuff. It's like, whoa. And then we get into the sermon.
Why? But
I think it
what
takes
is the
takes
reason
out the
for that?
focus.
What?
What's
Okay,
the
you
reason
think
for
it
what?
removes the focus? Like,
I think it takes away the focus. Yeah.
okay, so if they were able to do it without it taking away the focus, would you have a problem with that?
I don't sure. I suppose if that was an objective reality that you could not take away. The thing about it is, I think that so much of popular Christianity emphasizes on other things but the gospel to be the main point of events or of Sunday
Okay,
service, right? That's
absolutely.
my issue. And so it's this tends to be, and here's the thing, you got to be careful too, because like not everybody's had the experiences we've had growing up.
That's
A
true.
lot of people have never seen anything close to this, right? And that's why we were kind of opened up and playing kind of tongue in cheek. Like, I don't know what the Catholics did or the Reforms guys did, or some of the more liturgical service Christians do with their conferences. They definitely don't do this, right? So
that's true.
You can imagine,
and to be fair, this
coming
is
from
more
that
extreme than anything that ever happened with us.
Exactly, right? Like,
not even close. But
so anyway, without going into like and spending a whole lot of time on this, right? Like this, they're doing kind of flashy, showy things.
I don't think
it's a men's conference.
that sort of stuff is necessarily a negative. I don't think
it may not necessarily be a negative,
and
I also think that's not necessary.
Right. Well, sure, but I'm sure this is not a free conference. You know what I mean?
It's like $275 a ticket.
Okay, right. So if you're deciding to go to this, dude, I have no problem with adding in a little entertainment as well. Maybe it doesn't, it should definitely not distract. It shouldn't be something that changes the, the sacredness of the moment, for sure.
Right.
But there is a way
if it can,
to do it.
Can be healthily separated. It's
right.
Seems
do
like
you remember the Power Team?
Bro, I brought that up, man, at another podcast I was on.
Yes, that's right.
I'm telling God about this podcast. Like and subscribe. But
great
guys,
it's pretty
podcast.
A lot more serious than this one. So
we definitely don't take ourselves seriously
from a comedic.
Stronger Men, right? Like, pretty cool logo. I like that's pretty cool, right? So S&M. All right. So basically, you notice here, right? Mark Driscoll has been at this since what, 2017. He's been doing this since 2017. This is no strange thing to him. So I think we could probably objectively say that Mark Driscoll doesn't have a problem with the showiness. He doesn't have a problem with stuff like, circus events where people have their shirts off, doing feats of strength and, things like that. Or acrobatic type things. I mean, it's
another thing I'd like
odd.
to. It does seem odd, but I would like to say, first of all, if I went to this conference and a tank is running over cars, I'd be like, hell yeah. And then if there was a boxing match, heck, dude. And if there was like a boxing match, I'd be like, yeah, let's get in this. And then they're like, oh, after this boxing match, then they come out with a dude on a pole. And then I'd be like, okay,
right.
I guess.
Okay, so that's another right. We'll get into that.
Wow,
Right?
a
So
cool strength act, dude. It's the same
let's go
way
back.
when I watch AGT with my wife. You know, there are two types of things that I'm just completely sick of. Okay, I'm sick of singers. They get a singer, and you're like, oh, another singer. They couldn't go on American Idol, or they didn't have
Right.
any other. They couldn't go
They
on
don't
The
have to
Voice.
compete
They had to
against
come on
singers.
this one.
Yeah.
Right, exactly. Right. And then I'm like, oh, another circus act doing the same stuff that I saw somebody do last season. And we're like, oh, an aerial silk guy. Oh, a sword swallower. Oh, somebody balancing on a thing. Never seen the right. And when they do something super interesting, like, whoa, I've never seen that before, it's rare. It's rare.
Mhm.
So for me, I'm like, skip to the next one. And then they have like some disabled comedian that's always like, you have to be like retarded or something, and then you can advance. That's the like, oh, bring on the next, yeah, or whatever. Maybe I should say that in case we want to censor the R word there.
Yeah, it's fine. I can edit it out or in. I don't really
Right.
care.
But
We're not
yeah,
monetized. So, all
that
right.
is a
So,
good point.
so,
But yeah,
so
my
let's kind
point is,
of
it's
get.
not even that interesting of a thing. That's it. But but oh, then Mark Driscoll was like, oh, he took off his shirt like a woman.
Well, hold on. We'll get there. We're gonna get there. We're gonna get there. We're gonna get there.
Okay.
So
All
let's
right.
take a
I'm
step
sorry.
back. Let's take a step
Yeah.
back and we talk about essentially the event. I described the event of what happened. He takes off his shirt. He does a sword swallowing routine, slides down a pole upside down, and right before he impales himself, he stops it. Big, crowd, erupts and everything. This happened on Friday night. Not a whole lot of this as people were coming in, right? This happened. I don't think that this was something that was like everybody's in, everything's happening. It seemed like this is right as it was starting. So everybody's getting their seats and they have this performance. Anyway, so that's what happened. That happened on Friday night. The controversial issue and moment that we're talking about is on Saturday, either mid-morning or afternoon. Mark Driscoll got up to preach, and he preached on a book that on a topic that he wrote a book about, the Jezebel spirit and the Elisha spirit and the Ahab spirit. Essentially talking about the Jezebel spirit, which is funny. I was talking with some of my buddies on the other podcast, and some of them had never heard of this idea of the Jezebel spirit, and I think it might be just a charismatic thing. Like I remember like people like praying, but like we come against the Jezebel spirit. I'm like, is that a charismatic thing? Like, or is that like a Baptist thing, or is like
Maybe,
what
man.
circles does that exist? Because some people have never heard of it. And it's funny on Twitter, people are like, I've never heard like a meme of like somebody looking at a small piece of paper trying to like, I can't find the Jezebel spirit in the Bible. I don't know where it is. What's that called? Anyway.
Right.
So then his issue, and let me do a quote, read what he said. So setting the scene. Actually, why don't you describe what he does, and then I'll quote him. Like, the physical,
okay,
how he
gets down on one knee
takes off his hat.
Takes off his hat, right, and he's just sitting there like he's like, hey guys, let me get real close to you. Like, I didn't want to do this, and
right,
and so okay, I'm being real informal.
Yeah. Oh, dude.
But
so
there's some criticisms I have to make.
to the Church of Philadelphia, I have this against you. So it says, the reason I'm hoarse is because I've been praying and my heart is very burdened for you. And I want to be very careful with this. And this is not what I wanted to say, but the Jezebel spirit has already been here. And he goes on to say that the Jezebel spirit opened our event. And then he says, this is interesting. He says, this is a rebuke and a correction of no one. This is an observation. And it's like, if you're gonna stop your sermon to say this as like, and it's not a rebuke, just an observation, like either commit and rebuke or, don't say anything at all. Like just making an observation here. It seemed a little bit odd and ill-mannered. But anyway, he said, before the word of God, so this is a rebuke of no one. Just an observation. Before the word of God was opened, there was a platform. It was a high place. On it was a pole, an Asherah, the same thing that is used in a strip club for women who have a Jezebel spirit to seduce men. In front of it was a man who ripped his shirt off like a woman who does in front of a strip pole at a club. Then that man then ascended. See, our God is not arrogant. He doesn't ascend Our God is humble. He descends.
Wait,
Then
didn't he get up on the cross?
the sword.
Hold on. What? Sorry. Doesn't ascend? What about when he ascended into heaven? What about he said, I'll be lifted up and I'll be lifted up and I'll draw all men to me? What? Okay, listen, man. I only got a minor in Bible. Okay. I feel like I'm missing something here.
We should make a new word for when Mark Driscoll tries to be overly theological about something that isn't theological. We should call it a stretch mark. Boom. Anyway,
yes.
So like, as he said that, right, and he's like, then he swallowed the sword, and then you could hear, like, off microphone, right, off the stage, you hear John Lindell, who is essentially the spiritual authority over this event. He's the pastor of James River Church, and he says, "You're out of line, Mark." You're out of line, Mark. Like, you can hear it in the background, and like Mark kind of like looks over, like, a little bit, like, what's going on here? Like, how do I commit? And you could tell, like, he's getting, like, running out of things to say. Almost like he's expecting. He's like, I'm gonna get cut off. I need to keep going. Oh crap, he hasn't cut me off yet. I gotta keep going. I gotta say something else.
He had to,
I don't know what's going on.
I was expecting to get kicked off way earlier.
Earlier, right? Anyway, so he's like, "You're out of line, Mark. You're out of line. You're done, Mark." And he says, "All right, Pastor John, I'll take that correction." Goes up to the pulpit, closes his Bible and leaves. First time I saw it, no joke. First time I saw it, right? I'm like looking and I'm trying to figure out, and it's like a grainy video that they had, and Mark Driscoll, takes his Bible and starts to walk away. And I'm like trying to look in the crowd for the pastor, like, who's, yelling at him. And what I didn't realize at the time was one of the stagehands, right, of the event runs up on the stage, grabs the pulpit that Mark was like preaching off of, and then runs behind the stage. I honestly, no joke, I thought it was Mark Driscoll, like, "All right, Pastor John, I'll take that," and then like takes the pulpit. Like, it sounds it's like, well, nobody's gonna preach on this thing, you just defame the word of God.
My ball and going home,
bro. I wouldn't put it past something that Mark would do. In fact, I would, like, if you're gonna do it, right, like, if you're gonna go and like crash an event, like, you have to go all out. You can't, and you have to be completely devoted to your convictions, right? If he was gonna do it and they're like, "You're done, Mark. You're done, Mark," you'd be like, "That's fine. I'm trying to save these people's souls from the blasphemy that you're sharing." But he closes up his Bible, grabs the pulpit, and out of reverence for God, runs off and never returns for, and again, like, if you're going to go, you got to go hard, right?
Yeah. Now, and okay. So all of this has been covered to death so far. We've talked about, first of all, and it's not a high place. It's not an Asherah. The Jezebel
let's
spirit.
Explain that a little bit. What is so a high place, right? The high place is a place where the gods met, right? In pagan pantheons, and it was also a place where Yahweh met with Moses, right? Always Mount Sinai. That's where the place where the gods meet, right? Or that's where the deities meet.
And it was just a platform. If it was a high place, then so is where Mark Driscoll is standing. Okay,
he was on a higher place. Yeah,
right. Okay, and then what about an Asherah? An Asherah pole? We don't know what an Asherah is.
Nobody knows officially what it looks like.
We don't have any sources. We don't have any evidence on it. People have kind of tried to guess. Okay, it was a pole for acrobatics. Okay, and then he took off his shirt like a woman, dude.
Yes, the Asherah pole was not for. The Asherah pole was not for acrobatics. The pole that was there was for acrobatics.
Well, honestly, we don't know. Maybe it was. Maybe an Asherah pole.
They worshipped Asherah by doing acrobatics.
Yes, dude, by doing the flagpole walk. Where you're just like, yes, dude, that's Asherah worship right there. Dude, and he took his shirt off like a woman takes her shirt off to. I was really, like, I was confused by that, but then, like, I was getting ready for bed last night and I took my shirt off and my wife was like, "Ew, what are you, a woman taking off your shirt? Only women take off their shirt." Okay, that's fine. And this has been talked about to death on every other Christian channel that you can find on YouTube or anywhere else. So we don't want to spend too much time on the rest of this event, because what we really wanted to talk about is the stuff that's going on that went that happened after. The
Right.
aftermath of this, which is the new information. That's really the only thing. But we wanted to get through a little bit first. And you were saying that there was some stuff like starting out with the actual performer. Now, people were saying
Yeah.
that this dude was a stripper.
Right.
And
Well, and that's how it was advertised.
Right.
And when the story
And
broke,
if this
it was
was
like,
yeah, if he was a stripper, then absolutely it's something that should be called out, right? But looks like that may not
if he was an
be
active stripper performing at a right.
correct.
Yeah.
But
okay.
first of all, that's not what Mark Driscoll called out. He called out the Jezebel spirit, and then he said that the Jezebel spirit was seducing men. Now, if I remember the story of Jezebel correctly, that's not what she did, right? She was seducing them to worship other gods.
That's right. Yeah. Well, and the other gods that they were worshiping, it was very, you'd have sexual practices in the temple, right? So there was a sexually immoral, there was a sexual immoral aspect to it. In Revelation, it talks about, a church, one of the churches that is being confronted, that they permit the prophetess and the false prophetess, this Jezebel who tempts the elect into sexual immorality. So there is a sexual immoral aspect to it. Here's the thing, though. It's not just that, right? And oftentimes, right. Oftentimes I think people look at the Jezebel spirit, right? Or Jezebel as just this sexual thing, because that's where it was what is presented in in Revelation in the New Testament. In the Old Testament, there was this sexual aspect, but that you kind of have to read that into like the other gods, that she brings in and pushes out Yahweh. But she kills the prophets. She sows this disunity, and she essentially shames Ahab, her husband, for not standing up. Like she's like literally the instigator behind the scenes that shames her husband or shames a man. You're not a man. You're a little wimpy, whatever. You should stand up. And then Ahab goes and does something ridiculous to, try to reclaim his masculinity after being emasculated by Jezebel. Right. So there's a lot that kind of goes into it to focus in. It's just not
right. So what we're saying then is that Mark was clearly tempted by this guy. And so Mark Driscoll, he's dealing with same-sex attraction, and he saw this, he was tempted, and he was really upset about that. Okay. All right, Mark, all right. First of all, and this is something.
He's like the Alex Jones. He's the Alex Jones of Christianity, right? He's like the circus performers are turning the congregation gay.
He's turning his gay.
Sorry, I totally stole that joke from my other podcast.
Yes, I know. I know. Look, all right.
Oh man, that's so good.
And this is something else that this has bothered me about. Is some people have been saying that this is not appropriate anywhere, not let alone a church, but this kind of performance is not appropriate anywhere. And to that, I say, stop being homophobic. And what do I mean by homophobic? I don't mean it like the way that the lefties say it, where they're like, oh, you just don't like gays, or you think it's a sin, you're homophobic. No, stop being afraid of everything being homosexual. You're giving
Stop
too
looking
much
and
ground.
seeing homosexuality into everything, right?
Don't give ground to this, because it's gotten into the church so much, and this fear of things being gay, that like, oh, you can't give your brother a hug because you're like, bro.
I think it's a real problem with biblical masculinity in the church. That nobody knows what biblical masculinity is. Nobody knows what any kind of
it's gotten to the point where you can't greet your brother with a holy kiss on the lips.
Why can't you do that anymore? Right? Like, no,
because everyone's afraid that it's gay to kiss, kiss a man with tongue.
Just for clarity, we're not encouraging you to kiss people. We're a comedy show. We don't take ourselves seriously.
Listen, no. You want to greet your brothers with a holy tongue kiss. That's
that is not what we're saying. What we were saying is, like, a culture today has ruined the idea of masculinity. If you have, and this is interesting, I remember a talk at one of it's in seminary. There was one of our professors that gave a talk about the culture's obsession with seeing homosexuality everywhere as the reason or the justification for everything that seems, you know, awkward or something. And they
Right.
basically, he was talking about, like, if you have a friend, that is a good friend, you're gonna have a phileo love, like this friendship love, for your friend. I
Right.
think if anyone has truly had a friend, you experience that as it's a feeling of great gratitude that
Yeah.
you feel joy and happiness being around this person.
Right.
And it happens with both men and women. Like a lot of my guy friends, I absolutely love. It ignites my, energy and my soul and
Yeah.
feeds me, to be around godly men or my friends that are just like pouring into me and I'm pouring into them. And it's just
Right.
hilarious to be around. Like, so that's something that exists that is not, sexual in any way, shape, or
Right.
form. But
And
society,
so
what they say is,
right.
well, if you feel this way where you think that you kind of love this person, you might be a homosexual. You might want to
Right.
check and explore those
Right.
feelings,
And
right?
so we are both Navy veterans.
Yes.
And
I'm also an Army veteran, but
oh, that's
I,
dude, I don't want to
look,
discuss that because I don't recognize it. Um
I I
that's the noise
who
armies.
ya um
No, how dare you?
I so oh my goodness.
All
We
right,
have
but here's the
Navy
thing:
definitely has the best
the
song though.
friendships that I made through the military. Um, some people cynically call it trauma bonding because it is, but that's a cynical way to
Yeah.
describe it. But there are dudes that I love
Mhm.
that I don't like that much.
That's an interesting
But you have the strangest
I'm
friend
sure
groups.
everybody's had a friend like that, right?
Oh yeah,
They love them, but they can't stand them.
strangest friend groups. I would be there like we after work. You'd go out and there's like a black dude who's dressed like a rapper,
Mhm.
a white dude who is wearing a cowboy hat,
That's right.
uh,
Yep.
another dude who is a juggalo. They'll have a juggalo in your group, and the three of you,
And
and you
then one dude who's a goth, you're like, "Do you paint your nails like
yes, this it's
every
a
evening?" And then you clean them off before quarters in the morning,
right.
right?
No,
Before
that's the
formation? Yeah, okay.
juggalos are like. They'll be like, yeah, I remember I went out one time and it was like, yeah,
Okay, well,
it was just
what's a juggalo? Describe to, because nobody knows what a
sorry.
juggalo, or
Oh
maybe
my
a
gosh!
good portion of the
All right,
audience.
the Insane Clown Posse was a. They were very
Okay,
popular when we were
okay,
kids.
okay.
When they're
Explain who the insane clown posse is, because you're
the
dating we're dating us here.
I know, right? So the Insane Clown Posse is a rap group who dressed up as clowns, right? And their fans would also dress up as basically like bondage clowns. It was like
They
a
wouldn't
mix
wear face
between
makeup though.
some of them would.
Well,
But
okay, at their like
okay,
concerts,
but
but not like
right.
going out for at the bar or something, right?
Some of their fans would do that. And there was a dude I remember hanging out with when I was in A school, and this dude had okay, the baggy jeans were over for a long time.
The
This dude was
Jenkos.
wearing jeans or like cargo pants with straps and chains and everything, bigger than any Jankos I ever saw. And
Yeah.
he would do that and an ICP shirt, and then like eyeliner and nails painted, and he'd go out with me and like a black dude wearing a do rag,
Yep.
and then another dude who
Wear a
was
cowboy
like
hat.
wearing a cowboy
Bro,
hat, and we would go
you,
out and hang out after work. So okay,
can we just
this
acknowledge how awesome in the being in the military, like the kind of the friend group, you're friends with everybody from all over the country, and you're like, the only thing that we are bonding over is that we have to get up at 4:30 in the morning to do PT, and we're trying to have as much fun as we possibly can before that time comes. I don't care who you are. Like, this is what we're doing.
yes. And so anyway, the point is the bonds that are forged there are very close, and in fact, would by today's standards be considered a, a little gay, not because of any sexual activity, but because of the closeness of it.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
and maybe even some of the affection
Mhm.
you would show to these dudes. Maybe, you give a dude a hug,
Right.
right? Um,
What?
yes, right. Um,
Yeah.
and
So
yeah, so that's just plays into what we were
but yeah, so
talking about
that's
there.
essentially like that's the problem when it comes down to it. At its core, one of the biggest things is what Mark Driscoll called out, right? And the majority, and let's be fair, the position that I'm taking, that I think that you're also taking, is the hyper minority position, at least if you were to go on Twitter or X, whatever
Right.
he's calling it these days, right? Everybody is like, Mark Driscoll is, right to condemn a gay stripper from, or, from the men's conference, which, first of all, can I just say, like, let's let's be honest about and pursue truth here. Okay. It wasn't a strip show, right? Everybody's saying it's a strip show. He's a stripper. They let a stripper. Like, it's not a strip show. It has nothing to do with a strip show. It's an acrobatic show. It's a show that this guy, Alex Magala, had done numerous times on all of these reality, talent show type shows on television, dating back to like 2016 on. He's a professional performer that travels around the world to do shows. He performed at the Olympics. He performed like all over the place, right? He
Russia's
did
Got
the
Talent,
same
Britain's Got
exact
Talent.
thing.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, and he
And
takes off his shirt and does the whole, and every single time it's the same thing. And so what's frustrating to me is that either the Christian community doesn't care about the truth or representing the truth of the situation when they see something that is maybe borderline confusing, right? When you see this headline, Mark Driscoll gets kicked off the stage for condemning a male stripper, right? Like, they're not doing the research. All they're doing is emoting. They're just like, yeah, bro, stand up. And I think because when I look at Mark Driscoll and knowing a little bit about like his past and researching his past and what he's a little bit of a caricature in himself of what masculinity is, right? A masculine man um, takes correction. A masculine man is patient and is kind and is gentle towards people. A masculine man stands up for the weaker people, and also he stands up for what is right. And so when you take
yeah,
Mark Driscoll and you see that he does a very masculine thing of standing up in the midst of a conference and calling out what he sees as sin, probably one of the most authentic masculine things at the conference, right? That happens there, other than somebody giving their life to Jesus, but like literally standing up and calling it out. Um, Even though it was like completely wrong in his interpretation of
right.
like Asherah and all that stuff, it is the closest thing to masculinity that
Yeah,
some of these evangelical Christian men have probably ever seen. And so
absolutely.
let's gather toward that. Like, let's you see how what even a
Yeah.
slight
The thing,
sliver of what masculinity does to
yeah,
men. Like, yes, we're so tired of being beat down in our
yeah,
society that all it takes is a little bit of masculinity to get us going. Like, yes, let's stand up for something, right?
yeah, yeah. But if you're gonna do that, you can't miss.
Yes, what I'm saying. You can't
You can't
miss.
miss.
There's a man who
Yeah,
tore off his shirt like a stripper, or
yeah.
like a woman
All
does
right.
at a strip club. Like, come on, guys. Anyway,
Okay.
so let me just tell
So
you.
yeah,
Sorry, go
so
ahead.
we've gotten through. So we've talked about that way too long already.
Yes.
But let's talk about what we really wanted to talk about: the aftermath and some of the Matthew 18 issues
Mhm.
here. So yeah, dude, what happened after?
Yeah.
Um,
So then he called him out, right? So you hear booing, right? And I'm not sure if it was. It sounded like it was booing of Pastor John Little, Lydell,
yeah.
Lindell. Sorry, Little John Little, and Robin
Oh,
Hood.
Little John. Well,
So,
Little John. He went up there with and
so
beat. He just beat Mark Driscoll with a bow staff, like a quarter staff. Just went up.
oh my gosh. Anyway, so he gets up there after he tells, Mark that he's done, and Mark kind of walks away, and everybody's just going crazy. Boo, boo, get off the stage. Da, da, da. Which again, is like, I think a natural reaction when you're beat down as a man and you see like a man standing up for something, even when he's wrong, you're just like, yes. And then
Right.
John Lindell says, nope, you're wrong. And everyone's like, come on, we were having our moment. But then here's the problem. He goes and he says, if you don't agree, but we have clear direction for this kind of thing. Matthew 18, if a brother sins against you or a brother offends you, go to him in privately, as he kind of emphasizes that. And then he says, he talked with Mark for 30 minutes. Now, granted, this is on Saturday pre-afternoon or afternoon. An entire 24 hours have gone, well, almost 24 hours have gone by. And Mark could have talked to John Lindell that, hey, I have a problem
wasn't
with
even
this.
the
Hey, I
same
want to
day.
address this. It wasn't even the same day. Furthermore, and some of the other responses, John Lindell, and here's the thing, everything is coming from a perspective. I'm going to be gracious to everybody and say, grant everybody saying that they're telling the truth, right? And we can go from there. But his story is, after the event, nobody said anything. He didn't get any texts. He didn't get anybody come up to him and talk to him when he was talking to people. Nobody said anything like, yeah, that was a little bit awkward, or yeah, that was a little bit weird, or why did we have that act? Like, it was not an issue for anybody at the conference. And now, granted, he's the head of the conference. Maybe he didn't have access to the everyman that was there. So I don't know. But from the standpoint of it being an issue, it wasn't an issue at all, right? So he goes and Matthew 18s him, and he's like, he should have came to me first. He didn't come to me. So here's the thing. Matthew 18 doesn't apply to that particular situation if we're going to read it by the letter, right? What Matthew 18 is for personal conflict within the setting of a church. It wasn't a personal conflict thing, which is why many people on X are calling out that are passionate and agree with what Mark did. They say, well, yeah, of course, Matthew 18 doesn't apply because it was a public setting. Somebody needed to speak out about it. It was a public display in front of a public congregation. So you need to publicly call out the kind of demonic, strip pole dance thing, right? Like, that's what they're saying, right? I get that, right? At the same time, Matthew 18 doesn't really apply. However, I think we can gain some wisdom from the structure of Matthew 18. And I really like the response of Dr. Michael Brown, who posted about this. He wrote an article about this, and he said, to his credit, he's like, look, Matthew 18 doesn't apply. However, if there is an issue, Mark Driscoll should have gone to, and he had time, he should have gone to Pastor John, and he should have said, look, this was uncomfortable. I felt this was demonic. This is a problem. It needs to be called out. Can you come up with me and we can renounce this together? Let's address this, because that was obviously evil.
Yeah.
And when Pastor John said, no, I'm not going to do that, I don't think it was demonic in any way, which he would have said that. I'm not saying they didn't have this conversation, but I'm just like, based on it, he's standing by the decision to have that act.
Right.
And so when he says, like, no, we're going to keep that, I think Mark Driscoll's response should have been, and this is what Dr. Michael Brown says, he should have bowed out. He should have said, fine, you know what? I'm not participating in this anymore. This is this is a demonic, thing that's happening, and I cannot participate it. And at that point, then you go and you can publicly denounce it through Twitter.
Sure.
I mean, Mark Driscoll has a platform.
Right.
He has a platform.
Yeah, he does.
Right.
He does. So now this is not what I was talking about with the Matthew 18 stuff, though.
Oh, okay.
Because I was talking about the personal issues that happened after.
Oh, yeah.
Now, John Lindell came out, and this is the really the meat of what I wanted to get into. Was so John Lindell, and I'll give you the summary, was having issues with Mark Driscoll afterwards, and he was like, "Look, let's just do unity. We're still friends, and we can make up, and let's just show everyone we're unified." So it looked like Mark Driscoll was. Hold on, I'm giving a summary. I'm giving a quick summary. So Mark Driscoll starts doing some stuff that seems a little shady with social media, right? And then he starts contacting people and making being divisive and trying to destroy relationships, things like that, pit people against each other. So he was called out individually. Then he was called out through an elder at his church, an elder that he's submitted to. John Lindell said he went to an elder at his church and corrected him there. The elder corrected him. Okay, this is a summary of just what I've heard, and this is all claims. Okay, he went to the elder of church, also didn't repent. So then John Lindell is saying that's why he's bringing it to the church. So he goes in front of his church and lays it all out in front of them, because he says, according to him, and if it's true, then he is trying to follow the instructions in Matthew 18. Okay. bring it to the individual, bring it to an elder, and then if they still don't repent, bring it to the church. And so that's supposedly what happened, and that's a summary. So if you wanted to give more
more
info
for
on that.
context, I wanted to say for context to understand the relationship between John Lindell and Mark Driscoll. If you haven't heard of Mars Hill Church and where Mark Driscoll started that church and where he's come from, it's a big controversy. A lot of it is documented in this podcast called The Rise and Fall of Mars Hill. Kind of goes into the backstory, the history of it all. There's basically there was some issues of quarrelsome behaviors and abusive leadership, spiritual abuse, physical abuse that happened while Mark was the pastor. And end of the day, the executive eldership, after a couple of years, there was a call for a individual inquiry into his behavior, and they confronted Mark with their findings. Mark was like, "Yes, I did these things," and there was like it was a defensive nature of everything egregious thing that he did. And so they said, "You know what, we want you to kind of step down for like 2 to 3 weeks and be prayerful and repent." And he did. In front of the church, he kind of repented and said, "I apologize that I was part of that and was not the most Christian," and but behind the scenes, he definitely was not repentive, apparently. He's very defensive and confronted, and they didn't want to give it like a date, like, "Oh, Pastor Mark's coming back in 3 weeks." So they extended it. And they're like, "Until we can see like changed behavior, we don't want to just restore this man to leadership," which is
Right.
what you should do, right? You should see a repentant heart and everything. Anyway,
Yeah.
so they were subjecting him to church discipline, the way that a healthy church should go. And Mark dodged it. Mark did not submit himself to church discipline. He said that God told him that a trap was set and that he needed to leave, and
Right.
that they were going to accuse him of an affair and it was going to ruin his life and ruin everything about him, right? So he just leaves, right? Completely
Right.
broken man, totally humbled by the experience and everything, but unrepentant nevertheless. Nobody came to his aid. Mark Driscoll, except for the charismatics, but let me get to that. But Mark Driscoll, when he started the Mars Hills Church, he drifted into kind of a more reformed theology, more Calvinistic theology.
Right.
And he gained a lot of allies, right? The John Pipers, the Matt Chandlers, Acts 29, a lot, the Young Restless and Reformed, the Gospel Coalition, right?
Right.
He was the face of young Calvinism. When he didn't submit himself to church authority and he was called out for some of the other practices that he was doing, instead of being repentant, he left. And the Reformed Church said, "You're done. We're not forgiving you unless you repent. Like you're dead to us." So then Mark Driscoll changes his theology. He's no longer a Calvinist, and he goes into the arms of the only type of Christianity that will restore somebody after a week, is the hyper charismatics that are like, "Look, we can either crucify this man, but since Jesus already died, he's going back to preach tomorrow." Like it's, so it's like the two sides of the pendulum. And so the reason I bring this up is because Robert Morris and John Lindell and a few others in the charismatic movement are the ones that restored Mark Driscoll to service. And so
Interesting.
this
Okay.
is the hand that fed him, and he just bit it off. It's
Yeah.
like, okay, is Mark Driscoll a grifter? Like, is he just jumping from
Right.
church to
So
church? I don't know. So that's the
right.
context of that.
So instead of doing what he said he would do, which is post a picture and make nice and show everyone that they were still brothers and that this was an issue that was being dealt with behind the scenes, Mark instead supposedly did all this research on this acrobat, showed him that showed that this dude was a stripper, even though the dude is a Christian. It goes to the church
In Los Angeles.
in Los Angeles that is under Mark Driscoll, isn't it?
I don't think it's under. No, I think
But,
there's.
okay.
He's a. I guess Alex Magalla has like a mentor that goes to
Okay.
Mark's church or something, so he knows
Right.
that.
Okay. So
I don't know.
So he says, yeah. So this is maybe the stripping is something that he had done in his past, and
Yeah, when he was
and
21
he's
when he
repented.
immigrated. Yeah.
That's right. Okay. So ignoring that, he just so he gets this information out, right? So Mark is making it a bigger deal, and then he's texting people saying, "Hey, this is going to be a big deal. You should step away. You should, if I were you, I wouldn't have anything to do with it." But it wasn't a big deal until he started trying to push it, and then what is it? He called
Well,
John
to be fair,
Lindell's
we don't
son,
know if
or
he leaked it. We don't know if
right.
Mark Driscoll was the one behind it.
This is all claims that have been made.
Okay.
So I can't substantiate this. Haven't looked into this. I'm not going to. I'm not a journalist anymore. I used to do that. No, it wasn't that fun. So so then like he's calling John Lindell's son, telling him, "Hey, your dad needs to be corrected. He's off. He needs to step down, and you need to make sure that happens." Okay, he's
Mhm.
doing that. Um,
Saying there's something evil going on in the
Something evil
church.
going on,
And he's not the same as
trying
it
to
used to
create
be.
right
Hmm.
division between father and son here.
Hmm.
um,
Right.
and with if his criticism of John Lindell is anything like his criticism of this acrobat stripper dude,
Hmm.
then
It's a
there's
stretch
nothing
mark.
to it. It's a stretch mark.
Right. So the issue is that, he's going behind John's back after telling John, "I love you. I would do nothing to hurt you." And then he goes to his son and like, "Hey, you need to leave your dad. You need to become the pastor of the church. You need to push them out. This is your fulcrum moment," that type of thing. So, yeah. So here's the thing. None of those text messages have been produced. And to be
Right,
fair, this is not the first time that James River Church and John Lindell specifically have made claims that were, very important that you provide evidence for, like healings and stuff like that. They're claiming, and they're not producing the evidence for it. So take it with a grain of salt. But for the sake of charity, right?
right,
Just grant everybody is telling the truth. And if this is the case where everybody is telling the truth, then we can be gracious to say that Mark saw this, thought it was genuinely a concern, reached out to John, reached out to his son David, and said, like, "This is a real problem. I'm looking into this guy. He used to be, he not used to be. He's a male stripper. This is a problem. You need to fix this. I'm really sorry this is happening to you. The media is going to discover this. They're going to take you down. All that stuff." And John's like, "I love you. Mark, you need to take a step back. You don't need to do anything. It's fine. Just let it happen. Whatever, we love you. We just ask you not to be so quarrelsome, like." And
right.
also this guy, Alex, that you're accusing of being a stripper, he's a Christian, and he's been a Christian for, X amount of years. And we stand by
Yeah,
our decision. It wasn't a strip show. This is his act. This is how he, provides for himself. Anyway, so the problem is, like, if we are to grant this as being the truth, and all I think Mark has to do is say, like, I'm gonna sue this guy for lying about me. This is ridiculous. And then
yeah,
it has to go into court, and then you have to provide the evidence, and then you can make it all go away or whatever, and
sure,
settlement, whatnot. All he has to do is say that's not true. So far, Mark
right,
hasn't. Mark kind of just cut off everything. But if what John Lindell says happened is true,
right.
then I think it would be a classic case of Matthew 18. He went to him
Yeah,
personally. He had one of the guys that Mark Driscoll supposedly is submitting to plead with him to repent. And then this is before the story even got out,
right.
apparently.
Yeah,
Or maybe it got out and this is the
but
reaction anyway.
okay,
But then he doesn't
and then he
repent,
went to the church.
and so he's taking it to the church. And now here's the thing. If Mark doesn't repent, the next step, if we're going according to Matthew 18, we're supposed to treat Mark Driscoll like a tax collector and a pagan or a Gentile, right?
Right,
Like, essentially shun him, hand him over to Satan so that his soul might be saved, right?
right.
This is a serious accusation that's happening here, right?
Absolutely.
It's not something you should
Yeah,
take lightly.
right.
So I don't know,
So
man.
yeah,
It gets messy. It's frustrating. There's infighting within the church. There's people that we look up to as celebrity pastors or celebrity theologians, and
right,
we hold them to such high esteem, and you have different camps and tribes.
right,
And every single time some of them fail, it's like the body of Christ is crushed because we're not looking at one, we're not looking at these leaders as being men and being like, yeah, well, that's what you expect, right? We're somehow feeling like, oh no, what do I believe now? Do I still believe in God? Well, that's probably because we're elevating these celebrity pastors and these celebrity theologians as a level of something to be looked at with authority of of if they can't possibly sin, they can't possibly fall, and so we
Right.
put our trust in these leaders rather than our trust in Jesus. And that's the
Yeah.
real sad thing that I'm seeing here. Yeah, it's like
Yeah.
the Mark Driscoll's burnt some bridges in the past, specifically
Yeah.
with John MacArthur and
Okay.
some of the Calvinists and Reformed guys. And I just think it's hilarious because regardless of what Mark called out or whether they agree with Mark or not, they just want to crucify Mark again. Like these guys would be the ones that are condemning the charismatics, right? John
Right.
MacArthur and Justin Peters, especially the heresy hunter, calling
Yeah.
out heresy. He's like, I think he posted, he's like, these charismatics are wrong for having this type of performance in the church, but Mark Driscoll is still a horrible person, right? It's like tribalism. Guys, people that are watching this, okay? Your relationship is with Jesus. There is no one that is perfect other than Jesus. Men will fail you. You can have your fanboy pastors. You can be fanboys to your theologians. You can be fanboys to your apologists and everything. At the end of the day, the truth is still the truth, regardless of who's presenting it. Jesus is the only perfect one, and he's never going to fail you. Have your relationship with Jesus be rooted in that. Don't go outside. Don't go and try to elevate all of these other people above Jesus. Jesus is the foundation. Okay. Why are we having this discussion where we're taking sides on Twitter of all places, right? What's the best quote I ever saw, right? There's a fan fiction from C.S. Lewis's Screw Tape Letters. It said, "Dear Wormwood, create Twitter. Sincerely,
Yeah.
sincerely
Yep.
Screw
Yep.
Tape."
Yes.
That's
No,
like,
that's great. Well, and
so
I'll tell you what, man. I do think that, after all of this, I do think that um, for this men's conference, it was a mistake to book um, Mark Driscoll more than anyone else. So that's
what was it that somebody was saying, who hires a circus act where a man
yeah.
tears
Who
off
thought?
his shirt and slides down a pole head first to impale himself with a sword and thinks that that's the right thing to do at a men's conference? And the
Yeah.
answer is, well, the same people that hired Mark Driscoll to speak at a men's conference.
Yes. Now, and you know what? If you listen to that podcast, The Rise and Fall of Mars Hill, one of the things that they highlight pretty early on is that Mark would build up controversy and get notoriety for himself by going to men's
That's true.
conferences and
And just saying
starting stuff.
outlandish things. Mm-hmm.
Yep. And so
Well,
this is
and to
just
be
par for the
fair,
course for him.
right, exactly. And it's like, it's one of those things where you can say the right thing, but when the right thing is said with the wrong intentions,
Mm,
it destroys things. Like, let's take the whole Christ is King thing, right? Candace Owens going and quoting a Bible scripture that is definitely a slight at the very public argument that she's having with Ben Shapiro, and she ends it with Christ is King, right?
yeah.
It's like, and then when she's confronted about it, she's like, I'm just speaking the truth. Christ is King. Like, yes, of course, Candace. Christ is King. Yes, but that's not what you were doing. We know that's not what you were doing. So in the same way, like, what Mark Driscoll does is a good thing in the sense he calls out the feminism in the culture. He calls out the controversy of the culture and like come back to a biblical worldview. And he does that
Right.
well. He's a gifted teacher. I believe 100% that he has a heart for men. He just is a narcissist and he can't help get himself in trouble. And so
Right.
it's like, I
And by the way,
want to root for him.
we are not diagnosing Mark as a narcissist. We're
Oh,
not
that's
qualified to do that.
allegedly.
Yes. I
But
don't
like
like it when people just randomly do that. Oh, they're a narcissist. No,
yeah, fair,
no,
fair,
we're not doing it.
But at the same time, like it's like I want him to succeed. I want him to
Yeah.
do well because he seems to be the only one that is calling out without fear the culture that is so far down the road to hell that it's, it's like, what are we doing, guys?
Yeah.
And so it's like, why is he the only one? Where are all the strong Christians? What is biblical masculinity, to where we take this small sliver of biblical masculinity that Mark Driscoll presents, and it drives people like, yes, we need to see some real biblical masculinity, right? And
Oh,
so
yeah.
I think that's one of the things, like, maybe we do an episode on biblical masculinity and what that looks like,
Okay.
because
Yeah, I could see that. Well,
oftentimes I
here's the
don't
thing,
think
though,
that people
Josh.
recognize what it is.
I know you want to do that, but I have decided that this podcast is going to be a discernment ministry. So we're going to be going after all the apologists that you like. We're going to tell you why they're evil. You know what I mean? William Lane Craig, sinner, false teacher. That's what we're going to do. I don't know why, but we're going to figure out why. We're going to find out why he is. Then we're going after Dr. David Wood. He's down. Mike Winger.
Yeah.
Mike Winger.
Mhm.
No, done. You're done. All of you are canceled.
I
This is a discernment ministry. We're gonna be meaner than Justin Peterson.
I was gonna say, in the spirit of discernment, I'm discerning the spirit of Justin Peterson possessing you. But
he doesn't believe in that.
Yeah, no, he doesn't believe in discernment, or maybe, I don't know, maybe he does.
Well, not discerning a spirit, not as a gift of the Spirit.
That's not as a gift of the Spirit, but it's he has to walk around the Bible, and if you're not in the Bible, then you're anathema. So anyway,
right.
All right, so I think that's a pretty good place to end it. But yeah, so we're gonna try to come up with some of these episodes a couple as frequently as we can
now,
and
this isn't going to be the format all the time. We're talking right now about something that's going on in the culture and in the church, but mostly we're going to be talking about much more stupid things. We're going to be talking about I think we've been working on one pretty hard about humor, Christians' humor, and swearing, which is important to both of us because we're both sailors. And so like what Paul talks about, having clean speech and not using crude speech, and we want to know exactly what that means, because I can't tell you how many times in church I have told a joke and somebody has given me a disapproving look and then told me that all of my idle words would be judged, and that Paul says that these are not joke around like this kind of stuff. And no foolish talk. I got to tell you, dude, like 90% of my talk is foolish talk. And so I want to make sure, like, am I doing the same kind of foolish talk that Paul is saying not to do, or is there something else? So we're going to do some comedic exegesis, which is hilarious.
We'll see.
Hilarious
idea. It's a new form of biblical scholarship. Comedic exegesis. We'll also be covering other apologetics topics for those of you who have liked and subscribed to this channel. You'll know that there's seems like a lot of views on biblical reliability. So we might do another episode on that, or something a little bit more original, rather than cutting splices of things together and putting it into one cohesive message. And we'll just do it ourselves.
We're also going to be talking about media that we like. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah,
that way they can't.
I was gonna say, that way they can't copyright strike me and take it down. That's what I'm feared, man. Like, I think I've had so many messages, people like reach out to me and thinking like, this is really helping my faith. Can we use this in our app? Can we do all these things? I'm like, praise God, this is awesome. Yeah, anything that you can use it for. The only problem is it's not my original stuff, right? I'm just clipping together. Like, this was for a Bible study, and so might as well do our own content so that we can't get removed, and the that being as a tool isn't taken away. So so there things like that we'll go through.
We're also going to be talking about culture and media, things that are interesting to us. We were actually planning to do a whole episode on the 80s action movie American Ninja.
Okay,
the first R-rated movie we ever saw.
Yes,
and we
at Grandma's house.
We would go over to Grandma's house, and she'd be like, "Oh, boys, sit down. Hey, put on this movie, American Ninja." And it's like this violent, gory movie. Yeah, I didn't even know I had seen an R-rated movie.
I'm Joe's Ninja Sword. I'm Joe's Ninja Star.
Okay. Lots of stuff. Now, we'll probably only be talking about older media because I did something that was really funny to me, but kind of ruined Joshua's trust in me for media, for current media. It was a prank that was really funny to me, but I feel bad about it afterwards.
Yeah, basically never going to ever call you when the new movie or book comes out that I'm trying to read, and you've already looked up. Anyway, whatever.
There was a book series that came out we're big fans of, and the newest book we had been waiting for a long time, right? And so we're both reading it at the same time, and I'm going through, but I couldn't help it, man. I looked up some spoilers for it.
Jezebel spirit. That's the Jezebel
that's right.
Spirit.
So I looked up
there
spoilers, right?
There was a high place, Trevor, that you went and you ascended, okay?
So I looked up the spoilers, right? And all this stuff. And then when we're
talking through Josh, chapter by chapter,
right?
Talking through chapter by chapter. Hear this?
And so I know what's going to happen in the book more. And so we start making predictions, and I'm like, this guy, I think there's something off about him. You notice he's a lot more aggressive, and he's like, well, yeah, I guess. And I was like, I think he did the thing. And Josh is like, nah, I don't know about that. And I was like, yeah, you might be right.
And it turns out that's exactly what he did.
Yeah, of course it did. I started feeding him spoilers as my predictions. And then the more outlandish my predictions, the most outlandish predictions I could possibly make. And Josh is saying, there's no way. There's no way.
There's no way.
You know what?
Okay.
The thing is, dude didn't even expect it, didn't even suspect it until after he had finished the book and every one of my predictions.
And I called you, and the first thing that I said was a couple of expletives to be like, really?
Look up? No, you were like, hey, dude, did you look up spoilers?
I didn't. I think I confronted. No, I was like,
you were asking. You were giving me the benefit of the doubt the same way.
Maybe that's what I was. Yeah. Well, you know what? You're welcome. You're welcome that I approach conflict with gentleness. Okay.
Well, I'm glad that you've grown, because I happen to have known you all of your life, and that's not the way that you always did things.
The Lord changes hearts. So, all right, we'll go ahead and end it there. Enough of the back and forth causing this episode to go like 3 hours long. But yeah, like and subscribe. And let us know if there's any particular in the comments. Let us know if there's a topic you want us to go over, whether in apologetics, theology, in media, in culture. We're here for it. We'll give you
talk about a weird movie that no one's ever seen but you.
Exactly. Hit us up. We'll go through it. I'll attempt to give you my best analysis from a biblical worldview or a theological standpoint, and
I will make fart jokes.
All right, catch you later. Bye.